it already says 4 people watching? Holy shit, that was quick. I'm screenshotting that because that's just total bullshit. Okay. So, my phone died because my charger wasn't plugged in at the other fucking side of the thing. Because apparently I didn't tape it on there well enough. So, anyways, hold on for just a second while I resituate myself. Got involved in something while I was trying to wait for the broadcasting. Are there really 4 people watching? It still says 4 people watching. 3. Just click down as I said that. I don't know how the hell I could just click go live when there's already 4 people. That just doesn't make much sense to me. I would have to be like having notifications sent out for that to happen. And, she got to call me. It said 6 people watching a minute ago. Most I saw was 4. Anyways, what the hell was I talking about? Where's the notes? Where's the notes? Here, notes. Almost done. Do you hear what I hear? Okay. So, the phone is on charger. Going to put the thing right there. How am I fucking back? Like, why does the blanket always want to get in front of the thing? .3D poking. Ladies. Okay, oh, I apologize. So, pattern of behavior. What was the last thing you remember me saying, Conley? I think that's where I was in the notes, was pattern of behavior. Part thing stuff. See, I can't really believe that parents fall for Trump's bullshit. And if you're a parent that voted for Trump, you can't possibly be a good parent. Like, and I don't mean just the the obvious, immorality and immorality and lack of values and corruption, that kind of thing. I'm talking about just his pattern of unaccountability, his pattern of behavior. If you got a kid who every time you correct them has some bullshit excuse or wants to blame somebody else, is that kid gonna grow up to be worth a fuck at anything? No, they're not. That's how I know Trump isn't actually worth a fuck at anything, because nobody with that mentality could possibly be worth a fuck at anything. And it shows because he's been such a failure. They've had to prop him up so many times. They have so many people actually making the decisions for him, telling him what to do. So much, because when it all comes down to it, there's no bigger fucking loser than him. And you might be a materialistic dumbass and disagree with me, but no person who's gained wealth, motherfucking bullshit, god damn. Anyway. Am I there yet? The fucking thing's going around. I don't even know if I'm there yet. Anybody here? Well, the thing is, man, when people work hard and gain wealth, start a business, even, maneuver effectively in banking or the stock market, okay, when they raise their children to a high standard. When they think of themselves existentially, they think of themselves as meeting a high standard, and they want those children, they want their children to meet that high standard. They're not people who bullshit their way through life. They don't want other people to bullshit their way through life. That is the foundation of conservatism. That people are supposed to have standards for how they behave and act and earn an honest living for themselves and take care of their families. Trump has nothing in common with those fucking people. So it has to be a failure of leadership. It has to be a failure on CNN. Failure on the part of the people running the Democratic National Convention. That we just speak in this country, the Democrats are supposed to be the ones that are aware of the divisiveness right now. But still, we just speak to our bases. We don't try, the Democrats do not try to address things from the perspective of the faithful, perspective of the conservative, and certainly not from the perspective of the Nietzschean. And I say Nietzschean as being a broad terminology of a mentality that can lead to racism, but not necessarily racist. Someone can be culturally preservationist and still love other cultures equally. And these people generally can be determined by whether or not they let their children marry outside of their culture. At least during a time in which their culture is not in any significant danger of being annihilated. But, that being said, if someone of a prideful family, like, people whose families have standards and who the way fucking America used to think of itself and the way so many predictable childhood parental conflicts have gone the cliche way that they did. It's because this understanding of wisdom broke down, and then eventually the families themselves. And not to go from one tangent to the next, but it's another example of, like not knowing that the people on the X-Files happen to be from St. Petersburg. Another example of just how subtly but powerful the effect is. How coordinated, somehow, some way, coordinated the propaganda is that has profound, even existential influence on our lives. Spiritual, philosophical, not just political and logistic. We're basically told that before chauvinistic society, there was an even more chauvinistic society, and that before that, it was a matriarchal society. Just like we're shown, the Da Vinci Code, where it's, if Jesus was married, that proves that he wasn't the Son of God, and nobody's allowed to even talk about, well, no, there's a philosophical debate to be had here on whether or not God, if he incarnated himself, would want to be married. Whether or not there's any purpose in that, whether or not there's any wisdom in that, whether or not there's any lessons to be taught by that, etc. But we didn't have that debate. We were just told option A or option B. Well, which is Christ had a family, and that family became the line of royals. And in fact, if you want to get right down to it, there has been previously incarnations that have led to lines of kings, and the reasons why those were tough guys who conquered and beat the shit out of a lot of people, it's because they were descendant from gods and demigods. That's just too much to fathom nowadays. But for some reason, it's also too much to fathom that there used to be a binary. There's not just chauvinistic and matriarchal. There's binarian. That means men and women of equal stature, sometimes of different purpose. Not necessarily, though. But equal. And it considered to be a sacred duty of all citizens to preserve the equal status of men and women. But then back then, we even listened to what our children thought. Imagine that. Conway, are you still here? The fucking thing's going around. It still says 0 viewers now. I don't know what the hell's going on. Let me know if it's still working. It's fucking irritating me. But yeah. You see, if we all talked about the reasons why God was family, you might actually understand why God became mortal in the first place. And if you started talking about, you know, how it wasn't always just either matriarchal or, like it's either chauvinists or a bunch of Wiccans running around half naked around a fire or something like that. I mean, nothing wrong with that, right? But actually, there was once a much more enlightened society. And one of the keys to getting back to it is realizing that it existed in the first place. Because we would all have to evolve personally. Understanding Christ and Mary would promote personal understanding. It would make people feel more connected to God and each other. It would make them a lot more interested in questioning history, too. But instead, you're given two dry-ass choices that don't lead to anything but division. So were those choices given to you by a calculated purpose? Well, X-Files made you mistrust the CIA. Anyway, we need to discuss all religious and philosophical issues that have been influenced. We need to talk about them openly so people can feel closer together, so people can start listening to each other again. Debate yields understanding that gives people the inclination to compromise. That's on the notes. It's been a fart smeller who wrote this shit. But until we start talking about these things, until we start talking about binary society and the destruction of it, until we start talking about, well, Magdalenian refers to that binary society, and Mary of Magdalene, that refers to that. And start being intellectually honest about, oh yeah, Jesus might have been a white person. If Rachel Maddow comes out and says Jesus might have been a white person, do you think there won't be a bunch of Republicans suddenly wanting to hear what the fuck she's been saying? When someone becomes born again, they're accepted into the family, right? If someone starts speaking the language of a believer, they are heard by believers. The initiative to be intellectually honest about something and to heal the wounds that have come from years of us being separated by ignorance. Because all you have to do is say, wait a minute, now this is, and for some reason, there have been a lot of people keeping us from talking about this. We need to talk about this now. And we need to talk about why we've been kept from talking about this. We've been assaulted. We've had our minds attacked by a foreign power. And we need to get our minds right again. Or it won't matter left, right, up, or down. We're never going to find the middle again. Anyways, I think that's all for the notes, and that's all for this broadcast. You got any questions or comments? Now's your chance to leave them. I still don't. It's still you doing a little roundy round thing, and so. Yep. That's all for me. Anyways, hope y'all learned something, and you'd consider sharing this by link to your 5 favorite reporters by email or by Twitter, and just imagine, and I leave it up to the preference of the people who would want to talk to me, but consider the implications. Consider the attention that it would get to the subject matter that I'm proposing. If there was a guy who made a whole lot of sense, but also had this silly claim about being John the Baptist reincarnated, and that Christianity's basis was in fact built upon earning the right to be reincarnated. I don't expect to win people over to my point of view. I expect to help all of you people come closer to each other's point of view. And if you can't see how tongues that I want people to talk about accomplish that, you're just not looking, not even trying to understand how you got lost. You need to backtrack and retrace your steps, or you're never going to find the way home. So right now, we're lost. I'm proposing we retrace our steps. And I happen to be just the old fuck to do it. And I apologize if being incarnated and ancient happens to be the reason why I've observed these things and am able to educate people on them. But these two things are not separable. One is the direct cause of the other, in fact. So when it all comes down to it, don't feel bad for not knowing what I know, or not noticing what I notice. Because if you did, you're probably reincarnated too. Peace, y'all. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to click the little thumbs up button. Just be sure to use lube.